Hello there and welcome to another video from Change Tips and Tools. And here I am again, Phil, the Brummie that hails from Birmingham, England. Now, this video is a sequel to an Excel video that I showed you how to merge data without using Power Query or Power Pivot. And the link to that video can be found in the description. So today, I wanted to show you how I added slicers that works interactively with that merged data using formulas. Let me show you what I created, then I'll show you how I did it. So this, if you remember, is what we created in the last video on Excel, where I showed you how to combine data without pivot tables, Power Query, etc. And we came up with this, and when we filter on a drop down here, which then drives this dynamic visual here and this summary here. However, how did I turn this into this, where we now have a slicer to select our sales people? And this slicer requires no pivot tables. It works off formulas and interacts with the filter function, as you can see. So how did I do this? Well, let me show you step by step my thought process. So let's do this. First of all, let's move this summary to the right, because when we add the sheets here, it's easy then just to go to the summary. Let's unhide our support sheet, which is driving this. So previously we created this without the use of tables, pivot tables, and VB, just with formulas, and we finished up with this, where with the drop down, this then becomes dynamic. And this is also dynamic. But how can we do this with, again, without pivot tables, but get a slicer into here? Instead of just having a single drop down, have it with a slicer. How can we do that? How can we get this filter here in the summary, this to work off a slicer? There's a brain teaser. So let's first of all create another sheet. So I'm going to call this, rename it my slicer support. So the first challenge is when you're trying to insert, so if I go to the insert ribbon and do slicer, I've got nothing to base it on, because I've got no pivot tables, I've got no data model, and you need as a minimum a table to create a slicer. So let's do that. Let's create a table that's based off our salespeople and what we created for our drop down. So I'll call the header for this sales person. Then the formula is going to be equals if this value here does not equal blank, by 2 quotation marks, then just set it to the value of that cell. Output the value of that cell. Otherwise, just leave it blank. Close that bracket and hit return. Now, if I turn this into a table, it will copy that formula down into the table rows. So if I do Control T, and my table has headers, tick that and click OK. Let's give this a meaningful name. On the table design, I'm going to call this TBL sales people and hit return. And if I tab, it'll now pick up from the support sheet. And then when there's nothing there, it leaves it blank. So let's just get rid of that. So right click on the row of the table and say to delete rows, like so. So first thing then is that I want to make sure that this and this stay in sync. So I need to, I don't want to use Visual Basic, so I'm going to do a simple check here. So first of all, let's do sales people check. Let's expand that. I'm going to do equals count A, and I'm going to do it on this table. So where this arrow appears here over my table, if I do that, you can see it's put the table and the column name in there. And if I close that bracket on that, we've got 12. So let's do the same thing on the support sheet, because I want to be able to compare these to do that check. So this equals count A. It's going to be on this hash to include the spill range. Close that bracket, and we've got the 12. Then I want another check. So sales people selected. So this counts how many people I've got selected when I've got the slicer up. So I'm going to use equals subtotal count A, do comma, and again do it on this table here, select it and close the bracket and hit return. Now with this table, anywhere in this table selected, I'm going to do insert slicer, and there's my sales person, like so, and there we go. So when I select Andy, it filters it down. So what it's doing, it's hiding the rows here, and then I've got one selected, but you can see I've got salespeople check. It's doing a count. Doesn't matter whether they're visible or not, it's counting them all. If I undo that, and where this is important, so for example, if I just delete the last, let's delete the last row. So I've got 11 there, and the support sheet I've got 12. So I just want something to let me know on the summary that I just need to check the slicer once I've got it working. Once I've got it working, that's the challenge before us. So again, on the slicer support, I'm going to tab once to add that row back. So how do I turn this into a filter? So let's give this, so slicer, so as I'm thinking this through, slicer filter. So the answer is in the subtotal. So this counts. So while I've got 1 there, you can see I've got 12 rows in the table that's got text in it. But because I filter it in the way subtotal works, so how can I get this to count and give me 1s and 0s? Remember, the filter function treats 1s and 0s as true or false. Yeah. So if I select Bob and Fred like so, the answer is going to be by row. I need to do a subtotal by row. So if we do equals by row, my array is going to be the table, comma. So by row, you use the lambda function. Open bracket. So my parameter is going to be, I'm going to call it my row. And the calculation is going to be subtotal. Now, I'm going to do count A on my row. So what that's going to do is it's going to count each row. It's going to count 1. If it's not visible, it will be 0. So I'll just leave it as a 0. So I'm going to close the bracket on the subtotal, close the bracket on the lambda, and close the bracket on by row, and hit return. And there we have it. We have 1, 0. So 1 for Andy. If I just select Andy, I've got 1 and the rest are zeros. I select Bob. You can see there's Bob. So if I just select those 3 again, you can see I've got the 1. So we should be able to use that as a filter. So let's wrap it in a filter function now. So if I do filter, open bracket, the array is going to be my table, sales people table, do comma, and close the bracket on the filter, and there we've got it. We've got Andy, Bob, and so on, and that changes based on what I've selected here. Wonderful. So I should be able to, you think, just replace this element of this check with that filter. So let's try it, see if it works. So copy that, control copy, escape, go to my support sheet. Let's replace this bit here with that filter then and hit return. And no, it doesn't work. So, and the problem that we've got to try and choose, get this to then show almost a map of, in the summary, whether it's been selected or not in the slice. I get that true and false against this mapping that we can then apply to this summary sheet as a filter. So the way that we can do that is if we do support sheet filter, is if we use the XMATCH function. So if I do XMATCH, so the lookup value, so we're going to switch it around. So the lookup value is going to be the summary. So if I do choose calls, go to my summary, choose that first cell there, do hash for the spill range, and then comma because I only want the first column. Then as far as then the lookup array, back to my slicer is going to be this here, and do hash for that spill range, do comma, and I want an exact match. Let's see what that gives us. Let's close the brackets on that and hit return. Okay, so where it's found something, so it says it's found something on row 2 here. So this is the mapping. So it's found something there. So if I go to the summary sheet and go 1, 2, we've got Fred in row 2. If I go to my slicer, we've got Fred selected. So now I need to turn this into a true or false. So we've got numbers where it's found somewhere, and then we've got the error. So the answer is number. So is number. So let's wrap it in is number. If it's a number, it'll say true. If it's found somewhere, and if it's not, it'll say false. And there we go. So that works. So now I need to take this and this formula here and just replace this here. So let's take that, control copy, escape, go into here, place this part of the formula, get rid of that and do control V, hit return, still works, yes. So now let's take this formula, do control copy and escape. Let's go to our support sheet and let's replace this now, this filter. Do control V, close the bracket on that filter and hit return. And there we go. It's now including everything that we've got selected. So if I go to slice and let's do Andy, go to the summary sheet, it's got everything included. If I go back to the slicer and let's select Bob as well, back to the summary, so it's got Andy and Bob in there. However, this is not working for me now. We need to make this more dynamic because it's not working off this drop down here. So again, if I just select Fred there as well, and that all seems to work. So we now need to sort out the label and make it dynamic. So first of all, we need to concatenate what we've got selected here. So let's give it selected. CANCAT. Let's make that a little bit wider. So the formula, let's try CANCAT here, and then let's take this and do hash, close the bracket on it, and what do we get? Okay, so we've got Andy Bob's, but we want a separator in there. So again, let's do F2 to enter cell edit mode and move to the left with the arrow key. Then I'm going to do an ampersand, and let's add a comma to that as well, with a space, a comma and space in between quotation marks, and hit return. And there you go. So we've got Andy, Bob, and that. So if I do formula to text, so you can see what I'm entering in here as I go along. Wonderful. Right. So next we need to get rid of this last comma here, don't we? So I want to remove the last comma. Let's expand that. So text before is a good way of doing that. So if I do equals text before, so if I just get rid of that, so you can see it returns the text that's before delimiting characters or character. So if I do open bracket, so the text is going to be that. The delimiter is going to be the comma, so put that in quotation marks, comma. Then I'm going to do comma, and as far as the instant number, if we do a positive number, it's going to go to the right, but I want to go, as in, it's going to go left to right, but I want to go right to left because I want to get the last one. So I'm going to do -1, like so, and then I'm going to close that bracket and hit return. Great, so it's got rid of that last comma. So let's just copy that formula down so you can see what I've done. Okay, so now we need to find where the next last comma is, because we want to replace that with an and, because I want it to be Andy, comma, Bob and Fred. You know, just proper English there. So the way to do that is I need to find the position of that last comma. So the way that I'm going to do that is do equals the length function, use the text before again. So this time the text is going to be this one. The delimiter is going to be the comma again. So in quotation marks, I'm going to do -1. I'm going to do close the bracket on the length. So that's going to give me the length of it, right? And I'm going to do +1 and hit return. Let me just move that to there. And I'm going to call this find the last comma again. Just copy that formula down so you can see what I've done. So I've now found the position of where that comma is in that text. So I now want to replace that with the ampersand or the and sign. So I want to replace the last comma with that. The way that we're going to do that is use the replace function. So I'm going to do equals replace. The old text is going to be that. The starting position is what we found there with this formula. The number of characters that we're going to replace is 1. And the new text is going to be, so in quotation marks, space, then the ampersand or the ampersand. Close those quotation marks. Yep. And then close the bracket on that replace. And if I hit return, let's see what we get. Boom. So it's done it. So let's copy that. Let's move this over here. Let's copy that formula down. Right. I think with those formulas done now, we're now ready to create our labels, our dynamic labels. So first of all, we want where we've got less than 5 names, because at the moment, if I just escape out of that, take that filter off, it's going to include all of these, and that's going to be too long as far as the title's concerned. So I need to set a limit on it. So if I take Andy, we know we get errors there as well. So there's just one selected, Bob, and Fred. So the first one is where it's less than, so I'm going to set a max of 4. So less than 5. Selected. Yeah, and that's going to equal, that one with then the ampersand to concatenate something, add something onto the end of it. It's going to be quotation marks. I'm going to do space, hyphen, space, and then do combined sales, and then close the quotation mark, and I'm going to hit return. Let me just expand that, copy that formula down. Now, if it's just one, i.e. that, we know we're going to get an error there, so we want to select something else. So we want it to be 1 selected, and that form is going to be equals that in the ampersand, quotation mark, space, hyphen, space, sales, because it's just one person. And I'm going to hit return and then copy that down. And then if it's greater than 4, so greater than 4 selected, can't type. Yeah, I'm just going to put combined sales. No formula needed there. Right, so now I've worked that out. So if I then do that, let's do that. So let's now go to the support sheet and change the way this label's been created. So let's start again. So I'm going to do the ifs function, where I can do, instead of having to do a nested if function, I can do multiple logical tests. So the first one's going to be and. I'm going to go to my support sheet. So I'm using the and function to count if this is greater than 1 and if this here is less than 5, then that means we can do the less than 5 selected. So I'm going to select that one there and output that, comma. And make sure that I close the bracket on the and function as well, otherwise that won't work. So in other words, these two statements need to be true for this to be outputted. The next logical test is if this, let's move that out of the way there, equals 1, then I'm going to output this one here. And then the final test is if this is greater than 4, then I'm going to do this one. Then I'm going to close that bracket and hit return. So now on the summary, that's fine. If I select 2, go to my summary, wonderful. Andy and Bob combined sales, great, right. So that now works. So let's take that. Now I'm happy with the way the slicer and the summary sheet are interacting. I'm going to take that, do Control X to cut it. I'm going to go to my summary sheet and just going to do Control V to paste it there. I now know that I don't need this, so I'm going to delete on the no border, no fill. Let's make the text automatic. Let's go to here, get rid of the validation. So go to the data ribbon, data validation again. I'm just going to make it any value and click OK. Then I'm going to take these headings here, do Control X, and I'm going to paste them so they're in line with these headings here, and do Control V. I'm then going to grab this formula here, which remember is where I've used the VStack. Based on this VStack here, I've done this summary based on the summarized data here. So all I'm going to do is take that and move it up to just below there. Let me shrink that back down again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do on the home ribbon conditional formatting. So I'm going to manage the rules, and I'm just going to check this here, and I can see I've got this K7 here. So I'm going to do F2. So I go into edit mode, and I can use the arrow keys in here. So I'm going to get rid of that. Using the arrow keys, I'm going to change that back to 7. And then I'm going to click apply and OK. Then I'm going to take this, hold down the Alt key so it snaps to the grid. Move that up, select my slicer, hold down the Alt key so it snaps, and then just move the handle over there so it snaps. And then with that slicer still selected, I'm going to go over to the slicer ribbon, and let's give it four columns there. Don't like this format, so I'm going to select the design that's closest to what I want, which is that one, and then I'm going to right click on it and do duplicate, and I'm just going to format it. So on the whole slice, I'm going to go format. I'm just going to make the fonts slightly smaller, 9, and as far as the border is concerned, I don't want a border, so I'm just going to get rid of the border. Click OK, and then click OK again. Now it hasn't changed, but now what I'm going to do is do this here, quick style select to see the custom. I'm going to select that, and it applies it. Wonderful. So there's no border, etc. So that now works wonderfully. And what I'm going to do to stop it being accidentally selected here, I'm going to do, with it selected, do Control 1. On the properties, I'm going to untick. So if you do protect this, you need to make sure this is not locked. So, but it won't move or resize with the cells. And then here on the position and layout, I'm going to disable resizing and moving like so, which means then it can't be resized, etc. And then finally on here, well, I'm going to move this over to the left, to the top, like so, make it bold. I'm also going to take the border off the chart, so I'm going to select format, outline, no outline, similar. So again, take that, format, no outline. There you go, it's gone. And also now, because if I select more than a few, yeah, then I want to see the total sales up here. So what I'm going to do is take view, select the chart, do insert text box, let's just draw that there. Yeah. Let's do in the formula bar of the text box, do equals on the support sheet the sales data here. So that's the count, cost, sales, profit. So let's select that one, hit return. Let's do right aligned. Let's make it middle. Let's change the font to be orange there and make it bold. And yeah, I want that to be, so go to the support sheet. It's not the right format here. Support sheet. Let's change this to currency format, like so. Then the summary should pick that up. Okay. So now that changes with the selection. Wonderful. Now, I want the shading on this in the same way I've got the shading over here. So let's put some shading on this table, on this summarized data. So I'm going to select this range, conditional on the home ribbon, conditional formatting. I'm going to do new rule, use a formula. So again, this is going to be case 7, it needs to be relative. So equals if, open bracket, case 7, so no dollar signs, not absolute, does not equal blank, then I want it to do something, and I want to do another test, which is if, using the mod function, so the mod divides a number by a divider and then leaves the remainder. So I'm going to divide, the number I'm going to use is the row number, so I'm going to do row, and then the divider is going to be 2. Close that bracket on the mod, and if that equals 1, then true, do something. Otherwise false, do nothing as far as the formatting. I'm going to close the bracket on that first if, and then I'm going to do a comma. So let's close the bracket on the second if, sorry, and then I'm going to do a comma, and then do false for the first if, and then close the bracket on that. So if it does return true, as far as the formatting is concerned, the fill, I'm just going to fill it with this in the same as I did on the summary data over there. So I'm going to click OK again, and then still selected, I'm just going to go into conditional formatting, manage that rule. So this on the total here, where it's just got L9, etc. I'm just going to delete that. That's the one we want to keep. I'm going to move it up to the top, and if that's true, I'm just going to say stop, don't do anything else. Yeah. And on this, on the row shading, I'm just going to change that range. It applies to 1005, same as above, and click apply and OK. And there you go. So if I then select Andy, that works. Select Jane, so that all works. Bill, that works. It's Peter, that's fine. So now let's put that warning up here. So I'm going to do, you know, where the slicer doesn't match the number of salespeople. So I need to do equals if slicer support, if that, now that count there does not equal, go to my support sheet, that there, and I'm just going to say check slicer. It's fine, just leave it blank. I'm going to hit return. What I'm going to do is make that red and bold and italic, and I'm going to underline it as well. So now just to check that, if I go into this, and let's clear the filter, go into there, let's just get rid of that one. So let's delete that row, right click on it, go to my support sheet, boom, it's got it there, check slicer. So that's what I wanted. So if I then go back to there and just do the tab, back to my summary sheet, there you go. So I've got that warning just to tell me that there's something going on. If I select Bill, wonderful. So I can now hide the support sheet. So let's hide that, and let's hide the slicer support. I don't need that visible. And let's add some more data. So let's right click, unhide, let's add November in, drag that to the left to finish, go back to my summary, and there's November. Wonderful. So that seems to work fine, and there you go. And that's how to add a slicer that works with formulas. I hope you found that helpful, informative, and has given you some ideas for your own dashboards and how to use slicers with formulas. If you did find this helpful, then please remember to click that like, subscribe, and smash that notifications button for future content. And as always, I wish you a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Please take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video from Change, Tips and Tools. Bye bye now.